Good to be back with you this morning. If you have your Bibles, we're going to be in Jeremiah chapter 18. We'll start in verse 1. The word which come to Jeremiah from the Lord, saying, Arise and go down to the potter's house, and there I will cause thee to hear my words. Then I went down to the potter's house, and behold, he wrote a work on the wheels. And the vessel that he made of clay was marred in the hand of the potter, so he made it again another vessel, as seemed good to the potter to make it. This is a thought I preached on up at Brother Arnold's church and just couldn't get it out of my head. Going to the potter's house. Jeremiah, in this time, he was trying to figure out how to lead his people. And I'm sure he's probably down a little bit and didn't know which way to turn. And he went down to the potter's house, and he just sat there and watched him, what he was doing and how he was doing it and what he was working with. I got to think about the clay, how we're just the clay, and the great potter, the Lord, he just sits there and helps us, and he molds us and just makes us what he wants us to be. Jeremiah was just trying to get some inspirational thoughts and words to help his people, to help lead, help guide them. And when he went down to the potter's house, he was sitting there looking and just paying attention to what the potter was doing. First off, the potter he noticed a couple things there. The potter was there, the tools that the potter was using, in the clay. And you get to looking at that clay the way our lives are. We have to have somebody help us along the way and mold us to what we need to be for Jesus and to make us who he wants us to be. And the potter, that's in our life, that's the Lord. He's the one that has all control. And I believe if you look at the wheel and the tools, that's our daily life. Sometimes the tools and stuff in our lifetime during this life, they can be different things. Maybe it might be the trials or the tribulations in our life. Maybe it might be sickness or something in this life that might bring us down. But you know what? That just helps mold that clay, like the wheel does. It helps the potter do what his work he needs to do. I was thinking on this thought, and I preached on it the other day at Arnold's church when I went up there, and I just couldn't get it out of my head how great that clay and how great the potter does his work. I got to thinking this week has been a little rough, and things happens, and you just get to thinking about that sometimes that clay sometimes it gets hard to work with, and when we go against God, sometimes we'll get hard to work with, and sometimes he has to put a little bit more effort into making us who we are. I got to thinking on that thought this week. Sometimes I guess we need to sort of get some stuff out of our life and just make us where we're easier to work with, where God can do his work through us. You get to thinking about that clay right there, that clay, what made it was dirt. It come from nothing. And sometimes that dirt wasn't very clean. It wasn't wet, so he had to add a little bit of water to it to make it what he wanted it. He had to put a little different things in there, and when he said when it gets marred, to get to where he can't do much with it. And sometimes he'll have to pick out them little imperfections when he's molding that clay on that wheel. It might have a little pebble or something in it. Sometimes he'll just have to take it and pick it out and throw it out. In this lifetime, I believe that the Lord tries to do us like that. He'll take something out of our life and just take it out and throw it away, just so it helps form us to who we are and who he wants us to be. In that clay, sometimes you'll have to add something here or there to make it what he wants it to be. I believe in this during our life. Sometimes he has to add stuff to our life to make us realize where we need to be and just help us and make us who we need to be to shed his light through us. You get to think about what that potter can do. He can make anything out of that little bit of clay. He can do anything he wants to with it. And, he's in control. And he can do anything. He can make anything he wants and what he envisions. And, he'll start out with just a little bit of nothing. You know, he'd just be a lump of clay that a lot of people think, well, it's just dirt. There ain't nothing you can do with it. You know, and he'll make miraculous things out of it. He'll make nice things. And he can do whatever the potter envisions. You know, that's what he can come up with. And you get to think about what he makes. You know, none of the pottery or nothing you see, you can look on the shelves and at some of these craft shows, you know, none of it's the same. It might look a little bit the same, but there's always something just a little bit different about each one of them. You know, I believe that's the way we are. You know, if we was all the same, could you imagine what the world would be? I mean, it wouldn't be nothing. You know, and he makes each one of us just a little bit different. And he molds us just a little bit different. You know, some of us might go through this, or, you know, somebody else might go through this, but, you know, that's just a little bit of the molding process. It's just something just a little bit different. And I believe he does that, you know, so we can spread our problems on him, and that way we can ask him for help. You know, and you see somebody down and out, you know, maybe we might be able to share that with them to say, I'm not going through the same exact thing, but, you know, this is what I've done to bring me through this. This is how I had to cope with it. You know, and it all goes back to the Heavenly Father. You know, that's how we have to deal with things. You know, you get to looking at what the potter is. You know, when he has a problem with something like that, he has to go back to himself. He has to go back to it and start doing stuff with it. And another thing I thought about was, you know, that clay. You know, sometimes it gets so marred that the potter can't do nothing with it. You know, sometimes he just has to start over, and I believe that's how he does this in our lifetime. You know, sometimes we think we can do everything without him, or we're lost. You know, sometimes he'll have to pick that clay up, and he'll just have to take it up, and sometimes he'll have to put a little bit more with it, or he'll just take it and just mash it together, and, you know, start all over. You know, I believe that's what he does in our lifetime. You know, sometimes he just has to make us start all over. You know, I got to thinking about, before I announced my calling to preach it, you know, right there, I believe he just picked me up and he just said, you're going to have to start all over. Which, I mean, sometimes it's a good thing. You know, sometimes you get stuff in your life that you just can't deal with. You know, and he just has to make you start all over again. You know, when we get stuff cold and we get stuff in our heart against somebody or against something or against our family members, you know, sometimes he'll just pick it like he does that clay. You know, he'll just have to pick us up off that wheel and he'll just start all over and give us a new start on life. You know, you get to think also on that clay. You know, if they wasn't no potter, what would be able to be done with it? You know, I mean, somebody that farmed in the field, I mean, he could come in there, he wouldn't be able to do nothing with it. He wouldn't know how to do anything. But, you know, that's why the potter's there. You know, he knows his job, he knows what he can do with it, and he knows how everything he has to do with it to make it form the way he wants to. You know, that's the way you get to looking around the world today. You know, there's only one Lord, one God. You know, he's the only one that knows what he's doing. You know, some people think there's other ones out there, but, I mean, they're just going to mess it up. You know, that's like a farmer would come in and try to work his wheel. You know, he's just going to mess it up. And that's why I believe other people believing that there are other gods in the world today, you know, they're just going to come in and mess everything up because they don't know what they're doing. But, you know, I got to think about them little stones in that clay. You know, personally, you know, in my life, I have a lot of stones that the potter has to just, you know, he has to stop what he's doing. He just picks some little stones out. You know, sometimes I get to thinking on just evil thoughts or something that's not concerned to him. You know, sometimes we get hurt at somebody and we don't want to ask forgiveness for something that we've said to somebody or how we reacted to somebody. You know, sometimes he just has to stop us and say, look, you're living for me. You know, you got to be in his walk and beside him, and, you know, we should act like him. You know, we should act like Christ and be more like Christ. You know, sometimes you just have to stop and pick him little stones out to get them out of the way to where we can do what we need to do for him. And to be more like him. Like I said, you know, you get to thinking about, you know, that clay and the potter. You know, we wouldn't be nothing without him. You know, we wouldn't be nothing without Jesus in our life. You know, it's like before I got saved, you know, I wasn't nothing. You know, I didn't have no other place I didn't have nowhere to go to but a burning hell, you know. You know, I'd have never amounted to nothing unless Jesus come into my life. That's like this clay. You know, it'd have never been nothing unless the potter had actually took it up and put it on his wheel and started shaping it the way he wanted it. You know, and started putting stuff on it, on his touches on the clay to make it what he needs to be. You know, and you get to looking at that clay. You know, it's constantly having something done with it. It's constantly being changed. You know, that's the way it is in our lifetime. You know, we're constantly being changed by Him. If we get to reading and studying and being more like Him, you know, we'll constantly be changing to be more like Him. You know, that's like that clay. It gets to be more of the potter's envisions that he has of it when it cooperates and molds the way He wants it to. You know, it's like our lifetime. You know, if we'll cooperate and be getting closer to Him, you know, we'll be molded more to what He wants us to be and what He envisioned us to be. You know, you get to reading about how the pottery and stuff is made. You know, I just thought it was a cool little process of how it's done. You know, sometimes a potter has to put a little bit more pressure on that clay to get it to what he wants it to be. You know, I believe that's what He does in our lifetime. You know, sometimes He'll give us more things. He'll put stuff on us to just give us a little bit more pressure to see what we're going to do with it, to see how we're going to react to it. You know, I believe that's why He gives us trials in this lifetime to, you know, and you get to looking, you know, after He puts a little bit of pressure on that clay, He'll start forming the way He wants it. You know, I believe that's what He does in our lifetime. He'll give us something that put a little bit more pressure on us to see what we're going to do with it. You know, I believe it helps the molding process. And you get to looking at how He does things and how he just takes His hands, and His hands is the only thing that He can do to make that pottery form. You know, I believe that's, you know, if it wasn't for His hands on us, you know, we wouldn't be able to form. You know, we wouldn't be able to do anything without Him, with His hands the touch of His hands on us. But I just think I just got to thinking on that thought all week where, you know, stuff had happened all throughout the week, and you get to thinking, you know, that's just part of the molding process. You know, he'll throw them little stones in there. He might not notice them stones when he's first making that clay and that pottery. But, you know, when He gets to forming it, them little stones will come out. I believe that's what He does in our lifetime. You know, sometimes, you know, when we first get saved, we think we're going to be all for Him and nothing's ever going to happen and everything's all right. You know, and as you go through life, there's little stones that pop up here and there. You know, and that's just part of the molding process that He has for us. And I got to think about that this week, that just little stuff here and there just started coming out. I mean, it wasn't big stuff, but I mean, if we went where we should be with Him, you know, it could have been big stuff. You know, we worry about them little things. And I got to thinking, you know, why worry? You know, that's just part of the molding process. You know, He gives us that, and then one day we'll look back and say, Lord, we knew You was in control, but why didn't we believe You? Why didn't we think that? Why didn't we know that You was going to be there for us all the time? You know, He's always going to be there. It says in the Bible that He's always going to be there with us. You know, I got to think about that I got thinking down and out and how stuff was going, and, you know, and I just got to thinking, He brought it back to my mind. He said, you know, that's just part of the molding process. It's like I say a lot, you know, a lot of the things that He gives me on a message, you know, usually it's towards me. You know, it's how He just puts something in there that says, just study and meditate on this thought. You know, I said, you know, Brother Josh asked me Wednesday if I wanted to teach Sunday school, and I kept studying and just couldn't come up with anything. And I tried, and the Lord just kept bringing me back to this thought. And I said, Lord, I just preached that. Lord, I don't need that. I know that You're the potter and that You're going to fix everything. You know, and He just kept bringing it back to my mind. That, you know, all through this lifetime, we're going to need the help of the potter to be who we need to be, and to help Him lead us and guide us and form us who He wants us to be. You know, and you get to thinking of through this lifetime, you know, but unlike the pottery that the potter makes, you know, that when he gets done with it, he'll put it in the fire, and he'll sort of heat it up to make it, to keep its form, you know. But unlike that, you know, we're always on that wheel being turned and molded and shaped and just sort of looked over to get all the little imperfections out of. We'll be like that until he gets ready to call us up. I'm glad that he's the great potter. He's the great physician. He's the great shepherd. It's like I heard a song. He's the artist. He's the one that envisioned everything that he come up with. I believe that's like us. He envisioned us to what he wanted us to be. He drew us out. He'd already knew in the back of his mind who he was going to be and how he wanted us. That's why the potter is here. If he didn't have no envisions of what he could make, it wouldn't turn out to be nothing. But he always had that vision, like he does in our life. He has that vision of who he wants us to be. If we'll be closer to him, we'll get to where he wants us to be and how he wants us to look and how he wants us to act. But, we got to get a little bit closer to him each time. When he starts molding us a little bit more, if we'll be susceptible to his touch and his word, we'll form to what he wants us to be. Even though, a lot of times it gets hard in this lifetime to be closer to him, when troubles come and the way the world's turned today, they don't want nothing to do with God. They don't want nothing to do with God's people. But that's just a little bit of stone, or, that might be just a little bit more pressure he has to put on that pottery just to make it to what he wants it to be. But that's what I've got for, I guess, sort of teaching, preaching, whatever you want to call it, I guess. That's what the Lord would give me. Has anybody else got anything? I thank the Lord for what he's done in my lifetime. Some of the people that works around us, they're like, how do you go on? You just got to say, Jesus. He's always there with us. Amen. People take church for granted. That. I know I'm young. I take it for granted. I might be. One day we don't realize we're going to get in a shape where we can't go nowhere. And I get to looking back. Of when I was younger. Dad could do all these things. We do all these things. You get to looking now. He's getting up there in age. He can't do all them things. And, we take our health and everything that we do when we're younger. We start taking it for granted. I've took a lot of things for granted. But it's like you said, Lucille. A lot of we're blessed. We're blessed to get to come to church. It could be like some far countries. They can't even have church, and if they do, they get imprisoned or they get fined for it. We're in a blessed country. You get to looking when this pandemic started, out in bigger cities, they couldn't have church. You get to see all of them being fined for people being there. I'm glad we was where we're at. Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I got to think about that thought. You know, we take our church for granted. You know, we get to taking our fellowship for granted. You know, I've went to a couple different churches, and you know, it just feels different. You know, there's nothing wrong with feeling different, but you know, it just feels different that you might go to a place, you might know a couple people, but you know, there's nothing like your home church. You know, we take that for granted. We take church for granted. You know, they might be one day that we might not get to have church anymore. That it might be against everything that we know now. You know, when I went to Arnold's church, you know, I took our church for granted. You know, you go to a different place and it's just different. But I got to thinking, you know, I took a church for granted. I take our church for granted. You know, we come in, and we fellowship, and here lately we can't because of the virus and stuff. But you know everybody. You know how they react to things. You know they're always happy. And you go to somewhere else, and it's just a little bit different. They don't know you, so you have to go and introduce yourself or something. But I just got thinking, you know, how many people take church for granted? You know, how many people take God for granted? You know, before I got right with Him, you know, I took Him for granted. I lived like every day was my last, you know, and it wasn't the good way. It was just doing crazy, stupid things, you know. I guess that's just part of that molding process. But you know, I look back now, you know, I thank the Lord for everything He's done. You know, kept me safe from all the things I done. It's like, you know, it's like Jerry was talking this morning about about our testimony. You know, he usually mentions something about our testimony every Sunday, and you know, we get taking that for granted. You know, I got to looking back over the past couple months. You know, and people, when you let your light shine, and you know, it's like he said, sometimes you don't even have to say anything to show your testimony. You know, and it's like at the shop, people come in. You know, people that know you, they act different. You know, they might be of the world, and you know they don't cuss as much, or they'll say sorry if they do say a foul word or something like that. You know, I'm just glad God can use my testimony, maybe be a light to somebody else's life to show them that there is a better way. But if nobody else has got anything, I guess we'll dismiss. Lord, I just want to thank you and praise you for all you've done, Lord. Lord, just thank you for the many blessings you shed upon us, Lord. Lord, just thank you for your mercy and your grace, Lord. Lord, just be with the family that's lost loved ones this morning. You know, just show your mercy and your grace to them, Lord. Just comfort them, lead, guide, and direct them, Lord. Just show them who you are, Lord. First one lost, just bring them back to the almighty altar, Lord. Lord, show them that you're number one, Lord, that you're master of all things. Lord, just be with the preaching hour as we head in it, Lord. Just give the preacher what you need us to hear, what you need his children to hear, Lord. Just give him what you want him to say, Lord. Lord, just be with us, lead, guide, and direct us throughout the day. Lord, be with all the mothers, Lord. Just bless them and help them, Lord. Lord, I just want to thank you. Amen.